Toyota Motor Corporation has developed a system they call the 5 whys, which is essentially a series of asking 5 whys to whatever answer you give. So for instance, you say like, hey, I want to start a business for myself. Why? Okay, that's the first why. Oh, well, so that I can make more money and feed my family. Okay, why? I want you to just picture like the why as being a shovel, right? And every time you ask the word why, you're sticking that shovel in the ground and pulling some dirt away, and you're getting closer to that buried treasure, the root of what it is you're not doing or you're doing, so that you can understand it fully and leverage that. Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another awesome episode of The Life Inner Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On The Life Inner Show, we help people make more, work less, and crush it at life. I am joined by Polish Peter, my co-host. What's up, man?
So listen, today I want to talk about questions because this is interesting. So when I was learning English, the person that was teaching me English, I think she was teaching out of the actual book, because she said, whenever you go and meet somebody in the United States, you ask them, how do you do? Now, I don't know if you ever asked that kind of a question to somebody, how do you do? But it's like an old language. So it's a funny thing. I don't know. Maybe that explains why I have this accent and the way I speak. But what we want to do today for you guys is talk about asking the right questions, because whether you realize it or not, in your mind, in your conversations, in your language, in your communications, you ask questions all the time.
Why?
And the questions will determine what kind of answers you're going to get, right? Why? Well, look. First question, perfect. Look at you, how you just set it up. Well, So listen, one of the questions that I ask a lot of my students is just a simple question, why? Not so much that I'm questioning them, but I'm questioning that conversation, that belief, whatever that you have going on in your life, to kind of dig deeper, to kind of get into more of like uncovering what's behind it. And that is one of the very powerful questions that you can ask for yourself. Because what happens all the time is we don't start to question, let's say, our beliefs. So let's consider for a minute that you have a belief that, all bald people are short. Because Vojo is kind of shorter than me and he's bald. So all bald people are short. And where did that come from, right? So once you start asking the question why, dig a little deeper, you might come to realization that might not be very true. Or maybe it's an old belief that was in there and you keep repeating it over and over and over again. Also, the question why, we ask this question a lot when it comes to create motivation, actually create the reason why you have to do something. Do you want to use that example of, would use with me all the time of how powerful why can be, the question why?
You talk about this specific example?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I remember, this was several years ago when you were my student. And
remember, that means like, this coach was not there. I just moved on to somebody else.
I fired Peter as a student. Oh. And he had told me for a while. And by the way, the reason I'm going to tell you this example is because there'll be a powerful insight for you in regards to leveraging questions, in particular the question why, to help you do the things you say you want to do, or to stop the things you say you want to stop doing but you're still doing, right? Like, man, why do I keep eating these donuts? Like that's a good question to know, and a good question to find leverage over. And so Peter had told me for a while that he wanted to start working out and go to the gym. And I said, all right, man, well, listen, let's do this. Like, I want to measure your progress. So go ahead and get a DEXA scan. A DEXA scan is the gold standard in determining body fat. It's super easy. You lay down on a table and this little machine runs over you for like 3 minutes. And it tells you, very, very accurately what your percent body fat is. Because listen, this is a theme. If you've been listening to the show for any period of time, that, what you got to measure things to actually get a gauge for true improvement. And, when we're talking about health, for instance, losing body weight isn't a great measure because you have no idea. Is that water? Is it fat? Is it muscle? Like, who knows? So I have him get a DEXA scan. And I said, all right, man, so what's the percentage? And he's like, man, I don't think this thing was accurate. I was like, no, it's super accurate. Why? What makes you say that?
Well, I actually fought the lady on that because I told her she didn't calibrate it right. It was wrong. And she goes, we do that every single day. I'm like, well, did you do it today? So
Right. Well, because Peter came out to be like 30, well, you 34%.
no, 33.9% body fat.
33.9% body fat. And
Third of my body was fat.
over a third, technically.
Fine, over a third. Just a smidgen, because like 33.3, right?
Hey,
so just a smidgen over a third.
Hey, you're over. A win's a win. So here's the thing. So now I have this information, and I'm like, well, man, how does that make you feel? And he's like, oh, dude, I can't believe it. Like, what I'm trying to do as a coach is to push him to do the things that he wants to do. But you can't push somebody to do anything, right? You gotta help them decide for themselves they want to do it. This is one of the most important concepts in life in general. You cannot tell anybody to do anything. Like even you got kids, that the best way to do it is to get your kid to want to clean up, right? And so I'm sitting with Peter. I'm like, how does that make you feel? He's like, man, like, yeah, it really sucks. I'm like, so you're gonna start working out? He's like, yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, I really need to. But I could tell, like, just by his response, he wasn't serious about that. And I'm like, okay, what's another angle I can take? So I get online and I'm like, man, with that percentage body fat, your risk for stroke, for heart attack, for diabetes, for high blood pressure, I'm going down the list, right? All of these are increased dramatically. I'm like, that's a big deal. He's like, oh, man, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I got to do something. But I could just tell he wasn't convicted, right? And so then I thought for a moment, and I knew what was important to him. And a little side note here, when you know what's important to somebody and you know what's appealing to them, you can use that for their own benefit. And so I said, man, and because I knew his kids were the most important thing in the world to this guy, like that was his big thing, right? And I said, so who's going to walk your daughter down the aisle when you're dead, when you're not here anymore? And it was silence. The silence was deafening. And in that moment, a couple seconds later, felt like an eternity, with a trembling voice, Peter responds. He's like, dude, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to do it. And so that was the why that was strong enough to have him take the action. Because listen, we'd be going to Life Inner events together. We'd be teaching the Business Builder Workshop or the Get a Life Getaway. And I'd be up in the morning and I'd be at the gym. I'd come back before we even started the day, and he's still in bed and he's still sleeping and snoring. And
no. Now you're starting to exaggerate a little bit. Okay?
I don't know, man. And so after that day, and even to this day, when we're not doing an event, if I try to call him like around 3:30 each day, I hear weights clanking in the background, and he's there at the gym working out. So, dude, you tell people, like, what was it that made that so powerful for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, notice like asking the right questions, like what you were saying, why is that important to you? Why, right? And what's gonna happen when, you're not going to be there at your daughter's wedding, and she has to go down the aisle by herself. So those questions are really important, the way you ask. And the thing about that is that it got to the core of what's really important for me. Hit the heart, hit the emotion, hit what's really important for me. So when you are asking yourself those questions, when you're trying to, been trying to change this habit, you're trying to abandon the old habit, you're trying to do all kinds of different, trying, nothing is working. It is because your reason for it, the why, is still a should and not a must. And in that moment, when he was asking those questions, even though it was Vojo coaching, I couldn't find a worse coach, I think, and it still worked, right? So in that moment, that should became a must. And it's all because of the questions that you ask. And why is that important to you? Those are the important questions that help you uncover what the reason behind is. And you can start asking yourself those questions, write down on a piece of paper so you can go dig deeper every single time. Or you can have someone that you trust, that you know that they're not going to judge you, have the conversation with them, and have them ask you those questions about that area of your life that you want to change. Why is that important to you? Why aren't you, doing what you want to do, and those kinds of things. So I think that's the first thing that I wanted to dive deep a little bit, because it's so important, so powerful to be able to help you grow in business, in life, everywhere. Let's move on to the next one.
Well, and let me also say this, like, so this is, we didn't invent this process, but
No.
like, for instance, like Toyota Motor Corporation has developed a system they call the 5 whys, which is essentially a series of asking 5 whys to whatever answer you give. So for instance, you say like, hey, I want to start a business for myself. Why? Okay, that's the first why. Oh, well, so that I can make more money and feed my family. Okay, why? Right. So that'd be the second why. And subsequently you keep asking why. Now 5 is just a guide. You could find the answer after 2, or you could take 10, right? But
Right.
it's just successive unearthing of the underlying reason. I want you to just picture like the why as being a shovel, right? And every time you ask the word why, you're sticking that shovel in the ground and pulling some dirt away, and you're getting closer to that buried treasure, the root of what it is you're not doing or you're doing, so that you can understand it fully and leverage that. So that's just one question, but there's tons of questions.
Yeah.
So let's talk some more, man. What else we got?
All right. So next one I want to discuss is, every single time I talk to my students about creating their vision for their life, and they're in this particular moment in life, and they haven't gotten to that vision element. Let's say they want to grow their business to, let's say, $10,000 a month or $100,000 a month, and right now they're barely doing it, $2,000 or $3,000 a month. So there is a disconnect. There is the gap. So one of the questions that I ask, because notice that every single time we are doing something in life, we are being certain way. They're being sad, we're being happy, we're being, fearless, we're being excited, whatever it is. So the questions I ask is, who do you need to become in order to reach that? And then kind of that question has them thinking sort of into the future to see what type of a person, what version of this Polish Peter, because I'm going to have to grow to be a certain way in order to be able to operate in that space. Because think about it this way. If you're going to be making $100,000 in your business and you are not, you haven't become that person yet to be able to do that. So do you need to be persevering? Need to be, determined or dedicated or fearless or whatever. So that question starts to open up of what I need to do from that point as far as habits go to be able to grow into that person. So for instance, if you need to be persistent, right? And you know that in the morning right now, all I do is get on a computer and I look at my phones and I'm just not doing anything. So now I need to start working on my habit to be able to grow into the person who is a persistent. And, that question starts to clarify to see, who do I need to become? Is it persistent? Is it fearless? Because notice in some areas of your life that are working, that you're doing a great job, you are being a certain way. And that happens, that can be in business, that can be in a relationship. Think about when you're arguing with your wife, how are you being in that? Are you angry? Are you, shutting yourself down? Are you, being quiet? And that's not working in a relationship, right? So who do you need to become in that moment? What kind of a person's to show up that this conversation, this argument works out? So maybe instead of being angry, you need to be curious in the listening. So now a different conversation is going to come out of that.
Hey, we'll get right back to our episode. Well, I want to tell you about something really quickly here in a moment, and that is our Get a Life Getaway event. This is an event we've been doing going on 15 years now. We've had almost 10,000 people go through it, and it's an incredible event. If you want to transform your life, if you don't have the life you dream about, the one that you know you deserve and the one you worked hard for, and you are sick of kind of being sick and tired and not having all the things and experiences in your life that you know are waiting for you, then you need to get to this event. I'll just tell you right now, this event will transform absolutely everything in your life. We will take you hand in hand and walk you through step by step the process to create your ideal life in every single area, because they all fit together. This is a proven formula. We've been doing this so long now. We've tweaked it, we've refined it, we've perfected it, and we would love for you to be there. Peter and I teach these personally. We do not delegate these to anybody else. This is part of our vision. We love pouring into people, and we'd love to see you at an event. Now, to make it even more enticing for you, that even in of itself, it's awesome, is we're going to give you, because you're a loyal podcast listener, 50% off ticket price. So when you go to lifeinair.com, that's lifeinair.com, you'll go to the events page, you'll see the Get a Life Getaway. When you check out, after you choose the specific event you want to do, and by the way, we do about a half dozen of these events per year, 3 of the Get a Life Getaway and 3 of the Business Builder Workshop. You simply go to that checkout page, and when you're ready to check out, there's a promo code you will enter. It's called podcast. Use the promo code podcast for 50% off the Get a Life Getaway, and we will see you there. I want to highlight something here that you said in passing, but I think it's really important to tease this out. Is you said, who you need to be to kind of take those specific actions. And so a certain perspective, a certain mindset, a certain identity person is likely to take certain actions. If you're lazy, and if you consider yourself lazy or an underachiever, well, guess what you're going to do? You're going to find ways to underperform and to avoid work and to take the easy route. However, if you see yourself as being someone who's driven, okay, well, what are the actions and the habits that a driven person exhibits? What are the things you do? And so what you mentioned, the curious. What are the things a curious person does? They seek to understand without judgment. They're learning. They want to learn. They want to hear. They want to kind of understand more. And so how you show up for those things, the kind of person you need to become, is going to have an influence very tangibly in the actions you'll take. And that is how you kind of start to kind of get the results you're looking for, right? And so it's really important to understand the relationship between the questions you ask yourself and who you show up as in this particular case, and linking that to the actions and the habits, and that type of person or that state of being will evoke.
Right. So I think that's a pretty good explanation. So let's move on to the next one, I think.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Notice that, let's say right now in your life, you have really hard time. Maybe there are some circumstances, maybe there is something happened for you in your life and you're feeling sad, or you're being depressed, or you are, something is not right. Notice the conversation that's going on in your head, and notice the questions that you probably ask yourself. So for instance, if something went wrong, like, a big problem happened in your life, maybe you lost someone, or, you had a health issue or whatever it might be. And you start asking yourself the questions, for instance, why me? Why does this always happen to me? Those types of questions, notice what kind of answer you're going to get. Because your brain is very good at telling you the answer.
Yeah, because you're a loser, because you screw up, because you make bad decisions, because you whatever, all disempowering things.
Right. That's how you feel about yourself. That's okay, Bojo. I still love you. All right. But listen, notice how he answered that. Those are the kind of questions you're going to ask. So here's the thing. One of the hardest things for people to be able to do is to get out of that hole that kind of mentally they dug themselves in, because then when you think about how you feel afterwards, right? When you tell yourself I'm a loser, or because, life doesn't ever work for me and it's just how it is, and you feel probably bad, horrible, sad, and discouraged. So one question that you ask yourself, and that works really well, literally shift your entire focus, is what am I grateful for? Or what could I be grateful for? And you start looking for some kind of a reason, something in your life, even though if it's the fact that there is a sun outside, or I got up today, or, I still am breathing, or whatever it might be, but you keep asking yourself the question, what am I grateful for? Every time, and you start maybe writing down as many times as possible, write down all these different reasons. What could you be grateful for? Maybe something happened bad in your life. You had a health issue and you have kids. Well, I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful that they're healthy. I'm grateful that, whatever it might be. But when you start asking that empowering questions, guess what kind of answers you're going to get? Probably empowering answers. And I think that's a big distinction that people don't see because we don't pay attention to the thoughts that we have and we don't pay attention to the conversations that we have with ourselves or with others. Mostly it's automatic. So I want you guys to think about that person. What am I grateful for could be one of the most powerful questions that you can ask yourself in life.
Man, and this is interesting because like what I've noticed a lot about myself in particular is like there will be times where I'm super productive and I'm loving it and I'm in state and I'm in flow and I'm kicking butt and taking names. And there are other times where I'm like, man, it is just not clicking today. Like I'm just fighting uphill. It feels like an uphill day. And I've really tried to start doing a meta analysis on why am I feeling this way and like how can I kind of hack myself to get back in that mode. And one of the things that I do is that it's that self-talk, right? It's like am I making excuses for myself? Am I feeling sorry for myself? Am I blaming others? Am I focusing on things that are distracting me from what's most important? And so I think learning to master the questions, and everybody's questions are different. Like everybody's going to have different triggers, but starting to understand those triggers could be something to help you. One thing as corny as it sounds, and this is kind of a spin-off of something that Tony Robbins once said, where I found myself like kind of flailing, I'd be like, okay, if I wanted to be productive, what would I be focusing on right now? If I wanted to feel like I was, kicking butt, like where should I be like, spending my attention? And it starts to because sometimes I've also found myself, man, like not wanting to be productive, which is weird, right? It's like some sort of like weird cycle that like sometimes I got to kind of try to figure out what's going on. And like and so I think on a deeper level, sometimes we're asking ourselves the wrong questions and it puts us in the wrong frame of mind. On my whiteboard right here next to me, I have a few questions that really help me kind of focus and I'll review. So one of the questions I have on it's a little post-it note. It says like, am I moving the needle? Like, what am I doing? And is it something that's really important? And is it something that is going to have a tangible output and effect on whatever it is I'm trying to do? Like if I'm, if I'm trying to work in my book, right? Am I really working that? Or am I kind of like procrastinating and I'm like thinking of like cover design stuff, like just to like pretend I'm working on my book when I should be writing the thing, right? Another question I have is like, am I productive or just active? Like, so am I, it's kind of same thing, right? Like, am I just doing things that are safe and easy and I can feel productive, or am I really pushing the limits and moving things? So I think everybody has these different questions. Like, what are some of the other ones you have?
Well, so, the grateful is on there. I have one other question that I stole from the One Thing book. If you haven't read the One Thing book, I would highly encourage you to do that. But the question, I think I'm spoiling the book is, what's the one thing I can do today such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? I think it's a very powerful question because if you start looking from the perspective, especially if you have a huge list of laundry things to do, and majority of us do, and if you don't, you're probably 5 years old, right? Or you're 95 years old if you don't have this laundry list of things to do. So if you start asking that question, what's the one thing? Now you start to focus, like hyper focus on one thing I can do today, such that by doing it, by do that, everything else will be easier and unnecessary. I think it's a very powerful question. The other question that I have is I've learned over the years, and not so much about the how do I do the things, but who do I need to connect to? Who do I need to talk to?
Who can help me with this? Yeah.
Who can help me with this? So I have a question on my vision that says, how can I leverage people, money, resources, and time to reach my goals? So it's not so much like it's a bad thing, but because leverage can look at it as a bad thing. But I start looking like, who do I need to talk to? What do I need to do with the money or the resources and the time that I have to be able to reach my goals? So that's a very powerful question to help you connect with the right people.
So how about like, who can I get to mow my lawn?
So yes. The lawnmower guy, right? I can talk to him to help me mow my lawn, right? So have him mow my lawn. All right. Another question that I think, so you know what? We just talked about it right before the episode, and you brought something up because this is a question that shows up all the time, I think, for many different circles. And the question is, I want to see your take on it because I think you heard it somewhere, is if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? If you knew you could not fail, what would you do? What's your take on that?
Dude, we just talked about this before we started recording. And, listen, I'll be the first to say I've been asking this question for years. You have as well.
Yeah.
And I heard a recent interview with Tom Bilyeu, who sold Quest Nutrition for millions and millions of dollars, a lot of money, several years ago. And he's like, you know what? That is a horrible question. I hate that question. And I was like, I immediately I'm like, what? Yeah, that's what I'm like, whoa, why is that? Now, when I've asked the question in the past, it was always with the intent of like, hey, let's remove fear as an obstacle. Like, let's remove fear from being something that's holding you back, and let's identify what you really, really want. What's so important to you that you like, it's just within your heart and in your soul, and this is what you're all about, and you're supposed to do. And Tom's like, the question should be, what would you do if you knew where you were going to fail? And I was like, whoa, what? And he's like, and his rationale and the way he explained it was, he's like, listen, if you love something enough that you are willing to eat crap over it, and you're willing to like crash and burn over and over and over again because you still love it, because this is something that gets you so fired up that it doesn't matter that you're going to go through like the valleys for an extended period of time, that's the thing you should be doing. And I'm like, man, he's freaking right. Like, I never thought of it that way. Like, and so like, I've been doing people a disservice all these years of asking like that question. And I love the way Tom had said it. And it makes so much sense. Like, what do you love so much that you're willing to suck at it for a while? Like, right? Like, listen, like I play guitar. And I sucked for years. Terrible.
You don't anymore?
I'm okay now. But I still suck most of the time, but sometimes I'm okay. But I still love it. And so that is such a more powerful question that I never had thought of. And I'm like, man, like, yeah, I love that. I love that. So what are you willing to suck at, but you love it so much anyway? Because here's the thing too. Like, if you are not good at something, which by the way is pretty much everything that someone starts off new, right? Like no one starts off good at something the first day usually, unless you're some crazy prodigy, but like that's not 99.9% of us. And so what are you willing to suck at that you love so much that you're willing to do and get better at? And that's an awesome question.
Yeah, I think I like that because I think what he's doing there is he's assessing already what's there as the fear is going to be there. It's not going to go away. It's there, and acknowledging it and knowing that that's the case. What you do, who you become, those kinds of things. And I think that's a different shift that actually helps you maybe ask a better question and get better answers. So here's the thing. I know we're towards the end of the episode. We just wanted to give you this glimpse into these kinds of questions because I know from having hundreds of conversations with different students, probably thousands at this point, that we constantly ask questions. So what I want to leave you guys with is this. I want you guys to start listening to yourself for the next few days, even just for the day today. Start listening to yourself and start noticing, writing down what kind of habitual questions that I ask myself. Because you have habitual questions that you ask yourself all the time. Start noticing, write them down, and then ask yourself, what's the answers that I'm getting? And if you're not getting the right answers, guess what? Change the question. Shift to another question so you start getting the answers, because your brain is somewhat of a lazy thing, and it's not going to say, well, listen, Peter, that's the wrong question you're asking me. You need to ask me a different question, right? Brain's not going to say that. It's just going to give you the answer. So I want you guys to start to listening to yourself. And then if you have some really good, empowering questions that you've asked yourself that we haven't talked about it, I would love for you guys to come to the Life on Air Facebook page and put them in there. Post in them. What kind of questions are you asking yourself that are empowering you, that are helping you? Or what did you get out of this particular episode so we can help others in this world as they're listening to this podcast to start asking better questions.
Love it. Love it. Listen, if you've gotten something out of this, please share it with somebody else who needs to benefit from this as well. Give us a thumbs up, give us a review, let us know how we're doing. We are here to serve you. This is not something that we market necessarily. It's really just us putting out our experience to you. We're never coming from a perspective of like this is the way you should do things, but just what we've seen work within life and within our own lives, and things that we hope are valuable to you and you do something with and you take and move forward with it to live your vision for your life. Thanks as always. We'll see you next week, everyone. Take care.